So welcome. I hope that you're doing good today. I'm glad to see every one of you here. I'm glad that you came to listen to my story today. Maybe some of you have been here the past few weeks, so I'm going to give a little recap. We're going through the different things that Jesus did after the Sermon on the Mount. After he's come down from the mountain, he's given his sermon, and these are some of the things that he did, some of the miracles he performed after the Sermon on the Mount. So, the first week I talked about the centurion, how the centurion came to Jesus and asked Jesus to heal his paralyzed servant who was hurting and was in a lot of pain. And because of his faith, Jesus healed his servant. The second week I talked about Jesus calming the storm, about how he was asleep in the bottom of the boat and a storm came about. And his disciples were really scared, and they said, he told his disciples, "You have little faith." And he rebuked the wind and the waves, and the disciples marveled and said, "Who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him?" And last week, I talked about Jesus casting out the demons into the swine. How he cast them into the swine, and the swine went over the cliff and drowned. And the people wanted him to leave because that was their livelihood. This was a Gentile region. That's how they made their living, was by pig farming. So this week we're in Mark chapter 2, and I'm going to talk about how Jesus healed the paralytic man. So after he had returned to Capernaum, he was home in his house, and a big crowd of people gathered around him. So much so that the whole house was full, and people couldn't even get to the door. It was so full. And there was no room, not even at the door. And he was preaching the word to them. We don't know exactly what he was saying at the time, but he was preaching the word to him. And they came, this group of guys, 4 guys came, bringing their paralytic friend, someone who couldn't walk. And because the room was so crowded, they couldn't get to Jesus. So they decided to go on top of the roof and dig a hole in the roof and lower their friend down so that Jesus could heal him. Now it says they removed the roof above him and they made an opening. They let down the bed where the paralytic lay. So they laid the bed down through the roof. And when Jesus saw the faith of the friends, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven." And there were a group of scribes and Pharisees there, and they questioned in their hearts, "Who is this that commits such blasphemy? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" And Jesus, perceiving in his heart what they were saying, kind of like he was reading in their minds or something, he said, "Why do you question these things in your hearts? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or 'Rise, pick up your mat and walk'?" And he said, "So that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he told the paralytic, "Rise, take up your mat, and go home." And immediately the man rose and picked up his bed and went out before them, so that they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, "We never saw anything like this." And that's my story. So we'll talk about. Let's go through this story again. Who are the main characters in this story?
Well, you have Jesus, obviously.
Yeah.
You have the crowd. I guess you can kind of group them together as main characters. And then you have the Pharisees.
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think there's no one.
What amazes you about this story?
I would say the faith of the paralytic's friends amazes me, because they didn't let the people blocking the door stop them from getting to Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great deal of faith. You really want to have friends like that, right?
Yeah, you do.
What do we learn about God from this story?
That he is...
I'll rephrase it a little different. What do we learn about Jesus from this story?
That he's a miracle worker.
He's a miracle worker.
Mm-hmm.
What can he do that God can do in this story?
Forgive.
He can forgive sins.
And he, the Pharisees were kind of coming at his authority and his power, and Jesus basically came back at them in a very adamant way and explained to them, like, not only are you wrong about me committing blasphemy, but I'm about to forgive him of his sins and heal him right in front of you.
Yeah.
And it kind of put them at a loss of words. I was trying to figure out a way to say that. It just took me forever to say it, but
he spoke in a very corrective way.
Yeah.
Saying that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, and then showed that. He didn't just end it there.
Yeah, very good. What is something you really liked about this story?
The amount of faith that the friends of the paralytic man had, and the amount of faith that he had to go to the extreme to lower down
the paralytic man
cart
Yeah.
through the roof or bed, whatever you want to. Yeah, bed through the roof. And
how do you think the scribes and Pharisees felt when he said, which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or rise, pick up
they
your
definitely
bed?
felt offended.
Yeah,
because that's what they studied their whole lives for. Is their whole entire life, their job was to know the word, and they devoted their life to it. And the fact that they had someone who they thought was not, the Son of God, sit there and come at them like that probably offended them.
Yeah.
It did.
Or embarrass them.
Yeah, it definitely embarrassed them. But
what about when he actually got up and walked? What do you think? What do you think they were thinking then?
They're probably like,
they probably thought he was a witch or something, like, in all seriousness.
Yeah, they probably didn't know what to think, to be honest.
Yeah.
But that's my story. Thank y'all for listening to my story, and yeah.